Okay, today we're gathering outside the Lithuanian embassy because the Lithuanian embassy has, in conjunction with a major British institution, namely University College London, decided to run a conference today which is called No Simple Stories. In many respects in life there aren't any simple stories, but sometimes if one decides to complicate issues too much, where it gets to the point that you excuse the inexcusable, then there comes a point that people decide that you have to protest against it. Today with me I have the following people who have decided to protest against what the Lithuanian government have been doing in the last number of years, in particular since they joined the European Union in 2004. Bearing in mind that next year they'll be having the presidency of the European Union, it is rather disturbing when we discover that in the last 2 years in particular, they have been doing a number of actions that are wholly inappropriate. For example, this particular poster says, who would have guessed that in 2012 a European Union and NATO country would be doing this to the survivors and the memory of their victims, honouring the Nazi puppet Prime Minister who signed the orders for all the Jewish citizens of his city to be herded into and locked up in a ghetto within 4 weeks. Are these the values that an EU-NATO government wants to instill in its younger people? Now, this is just one incident of a number, and something that needs to be kept in mind is that in Lithuania, 96.4% of Lithuanian Jews were slaughtered, out of 220,000 were murdered, the largest percentage in Europe. And why? Because of the massive voluntary participation of so-called patriots, many of whom were honoured by the Lithuanian government in 2011 and 2012. 2011 honours for the Lithuanian Activist Front and the 1941 puppet Prime Minister, this gentleman, in 2012. Since that time, we've also had Holocaust survivors accused of being war criminals by the Lithuanian government, namely Yitzhak Arad. He was the first Holocaust survivor to be called a war criminal by Lithuanian government officials in 2006. In 2008, 2 women, Fania Brankovsky and Rachel Margolis, who can't return at 91 for one last look at her hometown in Vilnius, was accused and police sent to look for them, after which the prosecutor's office announced that they can't be found, leading to hysteria about Jews hiding their war criminals. To this date, the Lithuanian government have failed to write an apology to Rachel Margolis, 91, and say that they are sorry and that she can come to visit Vilnius any time. In a petition that I set up with others, many other academics around the world, namely actually more academics have signed this particular petition than the academics who will be attending the conference this afternoon. If we actually look at the document that my mother is holding over there, you will actually see all the names here on this document. In this document there is a petition. The petition was issued only 2 weeks ago, and in only 2 weeks we have over 300 signatories from around the world. We also have the names of many eminent scholars who actually are experts on Lithuania, unlike the people who are actually running and holding this particular conference this afternoon. Namely a gentleman, Anthony Polonsky, who actually was knighted by the Lithuanian government. A gentleman who found it fit to refuse my father and I, 90-year-old Ernest Löwenberg, from actually reading out the petition on the Tuesday tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. at UCL. It was refused, despite the fact that I had actually gone through all the different motions to find out who was responsible and writing numerous letters to different people within the department to establish if we could speak for 5 minutes and read out the petition, because we did not want the good name of UCL to be damaged in the process by indirectly working with the right-wing extremist government who, at home and very secretly, honours people who have been mass murderers of a kind which defeats description. And also people who, for example, have neo-Nazi marches not on any day of the week, no, but actually on Independence Day. Independence Day, and not just one neo-Nazi march in the year, but actually 2 neo-Nazi marches. Since 2008, they have allowed 2 of them. One of them to take place in Kaunas on the 16th of February, and the other one in Vilnius on the 11th of March. And what is worse still, that the person who's actually responsible for organising the neo-Nazi marches as a chief specialist at the state-funded genocide, a gentleman called Rikardis Sukutis. He is responsible and he is state-funded and he is in charge of running neo-Nazi marches. We also have this time round as well the Genocide Centre of Lithuania and the institutions and museums it controls, for example the Lenin Park. Only this year in 2012 the Lithuanian government gave thousands of dollars to create a park called the Tuskulėnai Peace Park, in which in Vilnius hundreds, not 1 or 2, but no, hundreds of people who were Jew shooters are actually honoured. This afternoon there's going to be a conference, and in this conference there will be academics who will try to explain away why these things took place. But to date there has been no letter of apology to, for example, the Holocaust survivors who have been falsely accused. And there has been no decision to stop the neo-Nazi marches or to stop the honouring of collaborators and mass murderers. Instead, no, the Lithuanian government, with an ambassador who not so long ago was in Israel, who wished to ingratiate Lithuania to the Israelis, has now come to London to ingratiate herself and Lithuania to the English and the British. And why? Because in 2013, Lithuania will be in charge of Europe. And why is it that in Lithuania, 2008, there was a document, a very important document called the Prague Declaration. The Prague Declaration, which is opposed by the 70 Years Declaration. The 70 Declaration, which actually was signed by many, many, many British MPs. Many British MPs who basically say, no, we do not agree with the Prague Declaration. The Declaration states that Nazi crimes can be equated with Soviet crimes. The problem with such an idea, as John Mann correctly pointed out, is that the Prague Declaration is an insidious document. Well, why is it insidious? Because it allows people who have done terrible crimes to get off the hook and explain it away. Now, you may think that this is just simply a conference this afternoon and it's open to academic debate and free speech. But I have a question. If it is so much open to academic debate and free speech, then how come when I asked UCL if I could be allowed to actually present the petition with my 90-year-old father, Ernst Löwenberg, who had 35 members of his family murdered in the Holocaust, how come we were denied that opportunity? How come the voices of people who are experts around the world have been silenced? How come those people, of which there are more people on this list than there are who will be attending the conference, not being allowed to be heard? These are all the people we have all kinds of scholars from different academic institutions in England. We also have in Germany, in Romania, in other countries in the States, in Poland. We even have a lady here who got an award, a large gold medal from the Polish government. We have a number of letters from very important people, namely, for example, Gerd Weiskirchen, who expresses his condolences for not being able to escort my father to the Lithuanian embassy today. Professor Gerd Weiskirchen is a German politician who has opposed and agrees with all points within this particular document that we have. There are also letters from Dr. Hans Koppe. Dr. Hans Koppe is a well-known German historian and also the son of the famous Koppes, Hans and Hilda, who were murdered by the Nazis. We also have letters from Bud Margolis, the cousin of Rachel Margolis, asking for why the Lithuanian government have not decided to clear her name and give her a letter of apology before this conference. It should be noted that I have received no response whatsoever to my request to have her write an apology, the ambassador here write an apology to Rachel. Has not done that. And we also have a letter here from David Kurkur, who is a former UCL student and also the child of Holocaust survivors, who is protesting against the fact that UCL, a great British institution, should decide to allow the machinations of a right-wing extremist Baltic government decide to take grip over their university and not allow free speech. We also have Ruth Barnett, a former Kindertransportee, who also is an active campaigner for the rights of Roma and Sinti and ethnic minority groups and an educationist as well, who is quoting to the ambassador the recent statements from Amnesty with regards to right extremist behaviour and neo-Nazi marches. Bearing in mind that we have a wave of right extremism sweeping Europe, where Greece alone has 8% of the vote is governed by the Golden Dawn Party, a neo-Nazi faction, it is irresponsible of any government to be holding, on Independence Days of all days, neo-Nazi marches. The message being given across indirectly is that we support such right-wing extremism, we support such xenophobia, such anti-Semitism, such hatred of humanity. I would like to